Hi everyone, welcome to this new session of CFA Level 2. Today we'll be starting with the next reading of fixed income. So till the previous sessions we had covered the first two readings of fixed income, specifically talking about interest rates and the introduction of binomial model. The second reading in particular was very important because binomial model, as something technical, it was not tough at all. But the purpose of binomial model was to allow us to analyze bonds that have options. Now, bonds with options as a theoretical concept is not something new. In fact, at your level 1 itself, you had a few smaller concepts like callable bonds, puttable bonds, or even convertible bonds. These bonds are basically bonds that have an additional feature. So they are like any other plain vanilla bond, but they also have a call feature or a put feature or a conversion feature. So bonds which have one additional optional feature which can be triggered by either the issuer or the bondholder, those are known as bonds with embedded options. Now for plain vanilla bonds, I already discussed in the previous reading itself that the best option is to use spot rates. That gives you the best approximation of what the pricing or the valuation of any particular bond should be. But in case of bonds that have options, we would rely much more on something known as a binomial tree. Now, this binomial tree in the previous reading itself, we also discussed that it is calibrated to make sure this gives us the best possible valuation that we can get. So the basic purpose of this entire reading is to get you guys familiar with how exactly the concept of binomial can be applied on bonds that have options, specifically talking about callable bonds and puttable bonds. For convertible bonds, we have separate set of calculations. We don't use the binomial method as such. But for callable and puttable bonds, we will be using binomial. Now, let me be very clear right away. As I said, in the fixed income, the first two readings are the ones that have new technical information. This reading has a lot of new things, but if you have indeed practiced a lot of questions from binomial method, this reading is very easy. So let's start with the first topic. The first topic in focus is going to be just a basic theoretical introduction as to what different types of options can be in context of bonds. So keep in mind that options by themselves are still going to be part of your derivatives curriculum. This topic is specifically talking about few options that can exist in conjunction with bonds. So this is not covering all possible options. This is just talking about the ones that exist with the bonds. So in case of bonds, the options are divided into two categories. You have simple options, such as callable bonds, puttable bonds, or a newer type which you didn't have at level 1, extendable bonds. Let's talk about what they are. So callable bond is the bond which gives the issuer the right to call the option, which means if the issuer wants, issuer is the company that issues the bonds to the general public, to the investors, if that company wants, it can recall its bonds at a specified price. Now, normally this is something that would start happening when the interest rates start falling. So this is something you did at level 1 also. Think from the point of view of the company that is issuing bonds. Let's say they issued the bonds and the interest rates or the yield on that bond is 6%. After 2 or 3 years, the market interest rates have fallen, and now instead of borrowing the money from the public, which they already are paying 6% at, the company has the option that they can go and borrow the money from the market at a lower 4% rate, repay their existing loans and refinance their entire debt at a lower rate of 4%. So the companies have that sort of incentive that whenever the market rates tend to fall, they would like to exercise the callable options. Aside from the interest rate approach, where the focus is on looking at whether the interest rates are lucrative enough for the issuer to refinance its bonds or refinance its debt at a lower rate existing in the market, we can also look at callable bonds in context of how the value of the bond is with respect to its par value. So think logically. Let's say the par value of a bond is 100. Let's say the market price of these bonds, in first case, let's call the market price to be 90. And in second case, let's say the market price is 110. Now, these are two separate situations. I want you to look at both of them in isolation. So in first case, the bond's par value is 100, which means if the bond runs over its entire maturity, at the end the bondholders will get 100. But the market price right now is 90. Under normal circumstances, our assumption is that whatever the call or put is going to have, the exercise price is going to be same as par value. So unless we have a specific exercise price given for call or put option, our assumption is that call or put option would be exercised at the par value itself. Now think logically. Right now the bonds in the market are worth 90. Does it make financial sense for the company to buy them back at a price of 100? No. They'll be paying more for the bonds than what the bonds today are worth. So in case the market price is low, the company would generally not be interested in exercising call options. But in the second case, when the market price of the bond is high, the company has an incentive that they can buy the bonds which are worth 110 for just $100. This becomes a sort of side comparison that we can also refer to when talking about callable bonds. Now, if you think logically, this is the case where the callable bonds are more likely to be exercised because the company will be able to recall the bonds at a price lower than what they currently are worth. This is exactly parallel to the interest rate comparison we did. Think logically. If the market price is high, it means the interest rates must have been low. That is why the market price is high. Think about premiums. A bond is issued at premium, it means the yield is very low. So if any bond's market price is high, it must mean that the interest rates in the market are very low, which means that both of these analyses, whether we look at it from the comparison of par value with market price, or we look at it from the yield with the market rate of interest, both of them are giving the same result, that whenever the issuer has some sort of benefit that he can derive, whether it is by purchasing the bonds at a lower price or by refinancing its debt at a lower rate. Those are the situations where the callable bond would give the issuer some sort of benefit. So I hope that part is clear. Again, this comparison of par and market price, this is not a different comparison altogether. This is just another way of looking at the comparison you had at level 1, which was in context of interest rates. Now, this whole situation also clears out one more thing, that in case of callable bonds, there is a limitation on how high the price can increase. So effectively, so long as price is less than par, it can trade freely, the prices can move up and down. But the moment price starts to exceed the par value, at that point the movement is limited, because normally companies in that case would like to exercise their call option and would like to recall the bonds. So for that reason, normally in case of callable bonds, the prices are not as highly volatile above the par value as they are when the prices are below the par value. So it's not a free-flowing chart like in case of a straight bond. If the yield is falling, the price would increase, and if the yield is increasing, the price would fall. But in case of callable bond, there is a limit. So if I make a chart, and here we have price and this is yield. So normally we have something like this. As the yield increases, the price would fall. But in case of callable bonds, we'll have something like this, where there is a limit to how high the price can rise. Effectively, from an investor standpoint, if you note that your bonds can be recalled at any time at a price of 100, why would you be interested in trading at these bonds at a price above 100? Why would any investor buy from you at a price above 100? So effectively, call options have slightly different structure when we talk about in a graphical sense. I hope all of that is clear now. Similarly, we have put option. Now, call option gives the right to the issuer. Put option gives the right to the bondholder. Aside from that, everything else is exactly same. In both call and put, it is the bond that would be repurchased by the issuer. So issuer is going to pay money to the bondholders to retire the bonds earlier than their supposed maturity. But in callable, the right to execute that transaction or to initiate that transaction, in callable, that right belongs to the issuer. In putable, that right belongs to the bondholder, to the investor. Now, if puttable is all about the investor would only prefer to trigger such an option to trigger the repurchase of the bonds if the prices are less. So if we talk about the issuer, he would want to repurchase at a less price than what the bonds are worth. But if I talk about the bondholder, he would be more interested in using this option as a downside risk protection, that if my bond price falls below a particular price level, then I would like to resell it to the company so that I can get a higher value. On the interest rate side also, the analysis was fairly straightforward, that as an investor, if you have a bond which pays a yield of, let's say, 8%, and after 4 or 5 years the market rates have increased to 10%, you would like to just give that bond back to the company, get your money back, and invest it in the market at 10%. So effectively, puttable has the exact opposite graphical shape and also the concept of callable, where in case of puttable bonds, the higher prices are acceptable to the investor, but it's the limit on downside that would be existing. So if I want to draw a graph for puttable, so this was callable bond, this was straight bond, and a puttable bond would look something like this. It would have price movements above a certain price, but it would not let the price fall below normally the par value or whatever the put value or the exercise price of my put option is. So I hope that clarifies the callable puttable bonds. We'll be looking at how the valuation is done using the binomial tree in the next portion. Let's quickly look over extendable bonds. So extendable bonds, no graphical presentation or anything given, just knowing the meaning is enough. Extendable bonds are the ones which give the option to the investor, to the bondholder, to extend the maturity of the bond. So if the bondholder wants, let's say the bond is maturing in 20 years, after 20 years, the investor would have the right to extend that maturity by maybe further 5 years, further 10 years. All of those details would be agreed upon between bondholder and issuer before the bond is actually issued. So it won't just be free will of the bondholder, of the investor, but there would be some sort of option that if he wants, he can extend the maturity. Those are known as extendable options. Keep in mind, for calculation's sake, the primary focus is on callable puttable bonds only. So all the others we are discussing, they are mostly just for understanding purposes. The next category of options is complex bonds. You have two highlighted in your syllabus. Again, just the meaning is relevant. So first one is estate put. Estate put is a specific case in which the puttable option becomes triggered. So normally when I talk about puttable bonds, the investor has the right that he can force the repurchase of the shares by the company. But in case of estate put, the put option won't come into existence under normal circumstances. Under normal circumstances, the bond will remain just as if it were a plain vanilla bond. If in case of death of any investor, the bond is transferred over to their next of kin, to their heirs, in that case, that next of kin has the option to enforce a put. So effectively, two things are happening now. This was just a put option plus a bond, but now you have put option, bond, and also a start date for the put option, which means only in case of death of a bondholder would the next of kin get the option of enforcing a put. So long as the investor does not die, the bond remains sort of a straight plain vanilla bond. So when this bond transfers the bondholders or transfers the ownership from one investor to another due to transfer of estate. Estate is a word used in law, specifically US law, for transfer of assets in case of death of a person. So whenever the transfer is happening due to estate, that specific case could make the bonds puttable. That is known as an estate put. That if you get the ownership of these bonds as a result of transfer of estate due to death of some person, in that case, these bonds would become puttable. So if the next of kin wants, he can enforce the put option from the issuer. Aside from this, you have sinking fund bonds. Again, something from level 1 itself. Sinking fund bonds are the ones where the issuer, the company, is required to maintain a provision of funds so that they can redeem some bonds every year on a periodical basis. So instead of requiring all the funds at the end, they would start retiring some bonds each year so that the financial burden on the issuer is reduced, or it is rather spread out over a longer period of time. So I hope all of these different types of options are clear. Next up, we'll move straight away into the valuation of bonds. Now, for valuation, I'm not going to go into details or give you any theoretical explanation. What we'll do is I'll do a quick 5-minute recap of the binomial method itself, same example that we had in the previous reading, and then we'll directly get into valuing the bond if it has a call option or if it has a put option. Let's move on to that.